Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Recently, Stanford immunologist and Professor Dr. Garry Nolan appeared on the Tucker Carlson show on Fox and talked about UFOs and aliens. And basically, as far as I'm concerned, by the time I got done finished watching this interview, there was... I believe that what the information that was relayed by Nolan just goes to show that the government has most certainly been covering up the reality that there is an extraterrestrial presence on Earth. And it's not just you. They're not just covering up what they know about UFOs. They're actually covering up the fact that there are beings here. They know it, and they've been hiding that. And now, just to be clear, Nolan himself made it clear during this interview that he's a scientist and he needs to see the craft and the beings himself before he could make a call on this. However, by the information that he provided, that he received from people within the military, I think it's pretty clear. Now, in 2011, there was the CIA and members of an aerospace company had approached Nolan, and they requested that he study people who were harmed by getting too close to anomalous objects. So, I mean, he was pretty surprised about this at the time. And I know I've talked about this in a different podcast before, but again, there were things that were stated during this interview that I didn't hear before. And you know, to me, this could be like, you know, we're getting real close here to the end game here, the smoking gun. You know, I really believe that. But anyway, the CIA came to him and they said, yeah, you know, people have died from this. People were experiencing brain damage, and it was because of these military personnel and agents that got too close to these objects. To me, I just think that, you know, this is just part of my reasoning, but just listen to what he says here.
So tell us about the injuries. So again, you've seen 100 cases. What kinds of injuries do people sustain?
I think the most dramatic are because we have MRIs, the things that you see within the body. And so what we had done was, in looking at some of these MRIs, we had noticed damage in the brain, white matter disease it's called. You know, if you know anybody, for instance, who's had multiple sclerosis, and you look at an image of their brain, you'll see these white matter objects. Oh yeah, you can see it there. Those white tracts there are just damage to the brain. Right, those are dead areas of the brain. And so if you have that dead area of the brain, whatever that function might have been is now gone. Right, so memory, movement, etc., can all be affected. Now, the brain can luckily rewire some things, and so depending upon the extent of the damage, you can maybe get over it. But you know, the ones that you just saw in that image before on the right, those are serious, and that was what essentially convinced me. But what I asked for of these people, I said, look, I'm not just going to believe you because you showed me images of these people. I want to meet the people. And so I was taken to meet the people and interview them. And I took their blood for later analysis. So, you know, it was seeing is believing, and, you know, validation and verification. I did as much as I reasonably can. Now, they could be lying to me. I don't know, but I doubt it, because I saw some of the sort of the consequences of their injuries, that you could sort of see how they were acting, et cetera.
And did they describe the encounters that they had?
Yeah, they did. And I shouldn't talk about some of them because some of those people's names have kind of become, public. And so sort of HIPAA rules really prevent me
from... But so without identifying them,
yeah.
What kinds of encounters did they have?
Objects on the ground that were, you know, glowing, or, you know, moving too fast, or they were there and they got too close to it and then it just disappeared. And then afterwards they get these radiation burns. Very often, some of them have been basically on the skin. You see this sclerosis of the skin, reddening, inflammation of the skin.
Like a Nagasaki.
Exactly. So some sort of electromagnetic radiation, we imagine. But then it goes deep enough into some of their bodies, if they got too close, that would cause lasting scarring within the body, which is not something you ever want to have.
Huh. And then the brain injuries.
And the brain injuries.
So as you can see, people suffered brain damage. He met with the people. He met with the people himself, right? There were objects on the ground, and people were going up to these objects and touching them, and then, you know, So some of the people that he was meeting with, right, were told him that these objects were on the ground, and they were curious, and they went up and touched them or got too close to them, one or the other. Some of them had, you know, and not only did they, you know, some of them get brain damage, but they had like skin problems, burns on the skin from some type of radiation. So, I mean, okay, these objects were on the ground. Now, this is what these military personnel were telling him, and agents, right, that got too close to these objects. So what happened to the objects? They obviously must have just flew away then, right? Because they don't know what they are. They're still anomalous. So these objects that the people that he was talking to were telling him that the reason they got injured was because they got too close to objects, and you know, some of these objects were on the ground. Now, I know I've heard a story where some people were flying too close to them, but this is the first I really heard. I don't think I've heard this one before, where objects were on the ground. Now, there was the Rendlesham Forest case in 1980, and he did bring that up earlier, but then later on during this interview, he talks about other people that he met with that went up too close to objects that were on the ground, and now they're suffering the consequences from that. You know, these objects weren't from Russia or China, right? They still don't know what they are. So I'm assuming that these objects must have took off and flew away then, right? Because they still don't know what they are, right? If there's an object on the ground and you get too close to it and it does something to you, and they're trying to figure out, you know, what these objects are doing to you, but they don't have the object. They don't have the object to look at to figure it out with, right? That means that the object took off, right? So basically, in a roundabout way, Nolan here is basically spilling the beans on the Pentagon. And then he actually suggested later on during the interview that people next time, one of the things that people should learn from all this is next time when there's a craft on the ground, don't get too close to it. And he also compared it to, like, you know, it's the same kind of injury you might experience if you were to get too close to the exhaust on a plane. So I guess, you know, but at the same time, he said he understood why some of these people would get too close to it, because they'd be entranced by it. They'd be really interested in this, and they want to get closer. If you saw something on the ground, they're like, "Whoa, look at that!" And you get too close. Next thing you know, you're injured. But then later on, he talked about some non-injury cases where military personnel told him about seeing actual beings. Listen to this.
Did any of the people you interviewed see anybody in control of these craft? See any?
Not in these cases, but in the injury cases, I do know of cases non-injury associated where things were seen.
What kind of things?
Little beings. I don't know what to say.
I know it sounds crazy. I'm just interested in, like, what the eyewitness accounts say.
Yeah, the eyewitness.
You're not ratifying this.
I'm not ratifying it. No, the eyewitnesses always talk about something about that tall, right? With, you know, they call them the Greys. I don't know what to say.
But with humanoid features.
Humanoid features. Now, I have a problem with humanoid features because, you know, one of my backgrounds is evolutionary biology.
Yes.
And so I don't see the possibility of something else evolving on another planet that looks like us, you know, unless God is intervening in very specific ways. Almost anything, an octopus could become intelligent and fly around the universe. So I think that part of what we're seeing here, I mean, look, if you're an intelligence, are you going to go down on a planet with a bunch of angry monkeys who might kill you? No, unlikely. You'll send some intermediary. Well, what kind of intermediary are you going to send? You're going to send something that maybe almost looks like them, but isn't them. So I think, and this is, again, from inside the intelligence community, Most of what we think we're seeing are avatars, biological robots that are basically put there to be the minions, if you will.
And that's the current view of the intel community.
It is a hypothesis. To me, if I were going to another place, or if I were going to study a native tribe of, let's say, cannibals, maybe I wouldn't show up in the middle of their village so that I don't inadvertently become dinner.
Yes.
Right? So you would send an intermediary first. But I've used this example. I don't know if you know Lex Fridman. You probably know Lex Fridman. He's an interviewer. He's an AI scientist at Stanford. I did one with him. And using an example of the ants as well. Let's say that there were a race of intelligent ants at the bottom of your garden. How do you tell them about Instagram? Right? How do you talk with them? How do you interact with them? You would probably make something that looked almost like an ant, and you'd put it down there. But then how are you going to interact with them? Well, with pheromones, that's how they talk. But you do something else, right? You're speaking about whatever it is you talk about at the dinner table, but to translate down to their terms, you would have to use some sort of an intermediary. So it's kind of a lost in translation problem, right? You want to put something there that can interact with them so that they can know that there's an object. But you, for instance, you're not going to show up and put yourself in danger. I wouldn't. I mean, we send drones.
So, okay, now I'm not sure I agree with his hypothesis here that they're biological robots, but he's saying this hypothesis is coming from the intelligence community, that they think. So they think that that the Greys could be biological robots and they could be like avatars. So he's saying that the intelligence community believes that, right? But not only that, okay, let's unpack this whole thing. So basically, what Nolan is saying here is that some of the non-injury cases, they've actually seen the gray beings themselves. They've seen them with their own eyes. So they're basically admitting to him that they saw the beings. Okay, and. Of course, the government's not coming out and talking about these things, right? But then on top of it, it's saying that one of the hypotheses of the intelligence community is that they could be biological robots. They're like avatars, and we're not really seeing what they really look like. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not. Who knows? They don't even know. So there you go. You're actually. It's unbelievable. They're basically, they don't know. See, this is another reason why they probably don't want to come out and say it. They don't want to come out and say it. They don't want to say anything. The government doesn't want to say anything because they don't even know what they have no explanation yet. They don't know if they're biological robots or not, or they don't know if they're just avatars and there's something else operating them or controlling them rather. That's unbelievable. So. Again, Nolan himself is not saying, 100% that he believes in this, right? I mean, that he knows something's happening, but he's not saying 100% that he thinks it's extraterrestrial, right? Because he needs to see the proof for himself. He needs to be able to, because as a scientist, he needs to see it. That's understandable. However, he's relaying information that he's gathered while working with the government on these injury cases. And I guess apparently he's talked to some people who weren't injured, and they told him that they saw the Greys with their own eyeballs. I'll tell you what, it's going to be interesting. The new defense authorization bill that's going to get passed here. It's going to be. I really hope. I hope to God. Right. I hope to God that once that thing is, once that thing goes through, because, that resolution was passed that basically grants immunity to anybody in the government who might have been told that they're not allowed to talk about what they know. Right. It's supposed to grant immunity to these people. I hope to God that we get all of a sudden there's a flood of information that comes out soon here. Yeah, I really do. I'm tired of the obfuscation. I'm tired of the cover up. I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the nonsense. I just want to see. I want to see proof. I want to see more data. I want to see the actual proof that they have. I want to see pictures of the aliens that there's no question that they have. I want to know about the Roswell aliens. I want to know all about that. I hope to God right now there's people just knowing that this is coming. That this. I hope there's people in the Pentagon that are dying to get this information out to the public. Right. I hope to God that they're getting prepared for it and they're making sure that they have pictures and film video, whatever, that they'll come out and show it. Now, apparently, they'll probably only be allowed to show it to the Congress at first. But the Congress can't sit on this forever, right? They can't. This needs to come out. This needs to come out to the public already. None of this nonsense. I'm tired of living in this. It's like this 1950s mentality. You ever watch like science fiction movies from the 1950s? Every time there's some monster that they suspect is on the loose, don't tell the public. You'll put a whole town in a panic. You watch movies like the old movies like Tarantula. There's a giant tarantula on the loose, but they don't know they're not sure yet, right? And the reporter's not allowed to tell the story yet, or the cops will arrest him because he'll cause a panic. There's you've watched movies from the 50s, right? That's what it's like. And it's the same mentality today. Oh, you'll cause a panic. Who cares about the panic? We need to get the truth out there. Well, there might be some initial panic, but so what? I hope there's people in the Pentagon right now, biding their time, knowing that this is coming, that this immunity's coming. And I hope to God that this stuff starts getting leaked, because you know what? There'll be no consequences, right? There'll be no consequences. And the hell with the Congress. The people have been waiting for this, for a long time. The Congress, they're representing the people. It's time to see this stuff. It's time to see the bodies from Roswell. It's time to see all the film evidence of UFOs. We know for a fact that they're sitting on stuff like this. Gordon Cooper, the late astronaut Gordon Cooper, talked about there was actual footage that he saw of a UFO landing with landing legs coming out and then flying away again. I want to see that stuff. I want to see the absolute proof that just ends this nonsense. Puts these debunkers, send them away already. We're sick of that. We're sick of listening to debunkers and all this nonsense, all this horse crap from people who don't know what they're talking about. We're on the verge here, folks. We are on the verge. I really believe that we are on the verge of this thing finally busting open. And I believe this bill that was recently, this resolution that was recently passed as part of this Defense Authorization Act is definitely going to help end this whole thing. I hope. It's time to end people in the military that want to tell the world, that are sitting on this information, that have access to it. You got to get ready, and because you know what, there's going to be people there that are still going to try to stop you. But once this thing passes, right? Hey, it's time to open the floodgates. Who cares? Let the public know already. We're sick of playing this game. It's time to take the next step. The human race needs to take that next step already. And anyway, I want to thank Garry Nolan for being so open about this. It's good that there's scientists like this guy. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what his peers say. As far as he's concerned, they're like they're acting more like religious leaders, rather than scientists, by just not wanting to look at the evidence. This guy's looking at the evidence and he's interested in it. He's fascinated by it. He wants answers too. He's not saying, I want to be clear about that. He's not saying that this is, he's 100% on board with the extraterrestrial hypothesis. I am. I'm sure of it. I'm certainly sure of it after all of the data and the books that I've read over the years. I'm sure of it, but I want more information, and I'm so glad that there's people like this that have the guts, smart people like this that have the guts to come out and say things like this and basically put it all on the line. And who cares? Who cares what anybody else says? It's all about the truth. It's all about reality. And the reality is there's an extraterrestrial presence on Earth, and we're heading toward disclosure. And I'm very happy about this interview that was on the Tucker Carlson show. And I think, of course, the link will be in the description. I really believe everybody should check it out because you're going to be fascinated.
It sounds like in the world that you live in, it is taken for granted, which is assumed to be true, that this stuff is real.
Yes. Yeah, it's 100% real. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. I mean, the data is real. And this is when I have these conversations with other scientists who have told me, Gary, you're going to ruin your reputation. It's like, well, my reputation has been always going against the grain, and look at where I am. I'm perfectly fine going against the grain. This is real, and we need to pay attention to it, and it's just unscientific to not study it.
Yes, amen.
Right? I mean, it's just wrong. And if you're going to be that way, you're a priest, you're not a scientist.
Amen.